We have reached a milestone when it comes to President Trump's approval rating. CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten is here with that. So what is that milestone?
You know, I took a look at all the polling, averaged it all together, and we have now reached the year mark. We have now reached the year mark in which he has a negative net approval rating. So we have been talking about this for a long period of time. According to my average of polls, what we've been looking at is every day since March 12th, 2025, President Trump has been underwater, and we've been counting up the days. We've shown this slide a number of times, and we have now reached the point in which Trump has been swimming with the fishes for a year.
So not so happy anniversary.
No.
So
unlike ours working together.
Underwater, it's always a happy anniversary.
I know. Love.
Underwater overall, but really bad with one voting group.
Yeah, really bad with one voting group. John, you know, we have spoken about this independence, independence, independence. The center of the electorate. We have been talking about how Trump has been just downright awful with them. And I decided we're going to look back and compare it to other presidents this century at this point in their second term, compare it to George Bush, compare it to Barack Obama, and look at that. 38 points underwater at this point. That is worse than Obama by 20 points. That is worse than George W. Bush by double digits. And of course, George W. Bush's second term went way off
Katrina,
the race.
Iraq, ultimately the Great Recession as well. So that is not a comparison.
No, you don't like that.
Why? I mean, what don't independents like?
What don't independents like? What don't the overall electorate like? Are you focusing on the right issues? Are you focusing on what people actually care about? And if you look right now, you look at a Fox News poll that recently came out, look at this, say the Trump admin is focused on the wrong things. 60% overall say that the Trump administration is focused on the wrong things. Look at that. 78% of independents say that the Trump administration is focused on the wrong things. I mean, how does that work? How does that work politically, John? I don't understand how that works, especially if those numbers hold to the midterm elections. That's a big freaking problem.
Well, it may not be working as you look forward to the midterm elections. So how have predictions changed about whether or not Democrats can take back Congress?
Yeah, okay. So, you know, look, we've been talking about the House, and pretty much every historical market, all the prediction markets, all the polling indicates that the Democrats are in the catbird seat when it comes back to taking back the House. But how about combining it with the United States Senate? That is taking back the whole enchilada, taking back all of Congress. And what we see is the Democrats' chance of doing that has been rising, rising, rising on a stairway to heaven, my dear friend. And what we see there is that Democrats at this particular point have been increasing those odds. It's not yet at 50%, but it is clearly rising. And that is something that I think is quite shocking, because a lot of folks like myself thought the Democrats would take back the House. But the idea of taking back the Senate as well, that is a pretty big deal.
I want to start with the political moment that we're in right now.
Look, I mean, President Trump campaigned and really arose to power against everything that we are seeing. And that is the beginning of his political challenge here. He campaigned against forever wars. He campaigned against the idea of this intervention in a way that supplants the America First thing. So now Republicans are left sort of scrambling to try and catch up and explain what is actually going on. And really by the day, sometimes hour by hour, he's losing some supportive key voices, like Joe Rogan, for example, yesterday, who was very supportive of the president, raising serious questions about what the U.S. is doing there. And I think part of that is because President Trump still has really yet to explain in a coherent, consistent view what the objectives are here. They've sort of been all over the map, when it's going to end, when it's not, what the objectives are. So, and the administration also clearly is not necessarily helping him. I mean, it's so striking the degree to which the cabinet secretaries, for example, have been not necessarily consistent with their comments either. Like the energy secretary, for example, Chris Wright, as the New York Times reported this morning, and we've reported as well. I mean, he was essentially sending the signal that the gas prices, the oil prices, that's not going to be an issue here. Well, look, it absolutely is an issue here. So it is, even the cabinet did not appear prepared for what was to come.
Yeah, and of course, part of the challenge that this cabinet has is following the bouncing ball, and the bouncing ball seems to be what the president is saying and what his message is, never mind the actions, at any given moment. Our colleague, David Goldman, has terrific analysis on CNN.com this morning. The headline of his story is "Trump Can't Taco Out of the Iran War's Oil Price Shock." And he is talking about several realities here. in talking to analysts. It could take a week or two to fully restore production, a bottleneck for a month or longer. Returning the Strait of Hormuz to typical traffic could take 1 to 3 months. And these are conversations that he's had with various commodities experts and analysts.
And I mean, there is nothing that Americans are more sensitive to right now than gas prices and affordability in general. I mean, this is such a massive headache for the Trump administration in an election year. And it seems as though they really didn't expect there to be this amount of meddling that we're starting to see, in this aggressive pushback from Iran. And I don't know, I don't think any of us know at this moment whether whatever however quickly they're promising to make things go back to normal could actually happen. I mean, it's all uncertain, and that's going to really rattle Americans who are already not in support of this war.
And despite the bravado from the president, which he tends to do and feels like he needs to do to try to calm things down, what are you hearing from your Trump sources behind the scenes?
He doesn't have an appetite for a long-term war, at least according to my sources that I've talked to. He's looking for ways to sort of message, we've done this, we've done that, now it's time to leave, right? The question is, as Maeve said, how much of that can he control, right? If he says, we're out of here, and then let's say the Iranians keep attacking with the missiles or the drones that they have left, what does a president do? I mean, the president has a lot of power. He's obviously, in a lot of ways, the most powerful figure in the world, but he can't control everything, right? And some of these things are beyond his control, but he wants to get out at some point. If he watches the markets closely, you see when he makes comments, when he wants the markets to go back up. He watches the markets closely, he watches oil prices closely, he watches the MAGA supporters closely. I mean, Joe Rogan, I can quite tell you, the president notices that. He's watching voices, he's watching polling in his party, he's watching the midterms. And I don't think he has an appetite for a long-term sustained conflict with Iran, at least according to what I'm told by folks inside the White House.
And if you just look at the messaging from the people in the White House, I mean, I know Josh and everyone else are privy to these conversations too with White House officials, but for the last 6 months, when we're talking about the economy, they would both publicly and privately tout gas numbers, making up, saying that these figures were down to $2, $1.99 in some cases across the country, saying that even if some of the issues that they ran on weren't exactly where they wanted to be, of course, blaming the Biden administration, gas prices were exactly there. You're not hearing that either in public or private when you talk to these officials. They're saying it's a temporary pause. They're saying just wait. They're saying this pain is worth it. But the question is whether or not the American people feel that the pain is worth it. And I think you're seeing those polls, which the White House is seeing too, by the way, that show that American people right now don't feel like it's worth it.